Hi guys, and welcome to another free Star Wars: The Old Republic free-to-play ability guide for the Jedi Sentinel. In this case, the Combat Spec. The purpose of these guides is to help players who are going free-to-play to be able to effectively play their class in Spec with only the 2 quick slot bars which are provided for free. You can always spend a couple of dollars to expand it to 3 or more, which would be ideal. But if you don't want to do that and just want to play for free, this is how you can do it without taking a hit. This is how you can have all the skills and all the abilities that you actually need for your spec to do well and to play the class pretty much to its fullest. So this is the Combat Spec. I want to start by saying what you're going to find when you first log into the game with your level 1 Jedi Knight. You're going to find that you have a number of abilities. You have Strike, you have Slash, you have SWtOR form, you will have Quick Travel, you will have Introspection, and you will have Force Might. I believe that's all. If I've forgotten anything else, it can be removed from your quick bar. The first thing you should do is remove Quick Travel from your quick bar. You do not need it on the quick bar. Anytime you need to access this, just press P, and that will bring up your list of abilities, and from there you can quick travel. It's what I do, it's what people I know do, it's what I'm sure many folks do. It's not an ability that is necessary to have on your quick bars. It's used very infrequently just for traveling at certain times, and it doesn't need to be on the bars, so you don't need it. The other one, which is probably the most annoying thing you'll have to deal with, at least as a Sentinel, is you should take Force Might off. Force Might is a buff. It increases your stats for 60 minutes or until death, and the stats of any allies around you when you cast it. It's something which you should always have active as a Jedi Sentinel. Every class has their own buff, and each class should always have their buff active. Unfortunately, we really don't have the space for it. But considering that it lasts 60 minutes, or until you die, it really shouldn't be that big a problem. Just remember to activate it again by pressing P and going through the list and getting it each time it runs out. Or if you die, which hopefully won't happen very much. It really shouldn't for the most part. And really, once you've done it a few times, it becomes very second nature. Going and quick traveling takes no time at all for me to press P and find it. I know exactly where it is, and off we go. So that is basically that in terms of what you're going to do at first. Now, as you go forward, how are we going to fit all of these different abilities into your 2 quick slot bars? Well, let us start by just saying that this is how I've designed this guide. I want you, as you go forth, leveling up, to train from your trainer every ability that he offers you. Every time you hit a new level and there's new stuff to train it. I'm going to tell you now in this video, and of course the link to the text will be below, that you can go and read it so that you can do it offline and you don't have to try to go back and listen to me to remember everything. I'm going to mention the abilities that for Combat Spec Sentinels you don't need. And I'll also mention a couple that you kind of want to have, but if you really are looking for an extra slot, you might be able to make the decision to get rid of this here or there. So all you have to do to make this work, train everything you're offered, remove those things which I tell you from your bars when you run out of space. So for example, the very first thing that I'm going to tell you is SWtOR form. You should remove that when you run out of space. SWtOR form is one of 3 different forms that Jedi Sentinels can use. Think of it kind of like Kung Fu versus Judo versus Karate or something. The Combat Spec Sentinel will not be using SWtOR form, but you're not going to get a Taru form, which is the form you will be using for several more levels. So you can just leave this one there for now. But eventually you'll have 24 abilities, your bars will be full, and it's time to train a new one. In that case, you can pull SWtOR form off perfectly fine. You shouldn't have a problem. You don't need it at all. The next one that you're going to remove is riposte. This is mainly an ability for tank spec guardians. Some people might use it here and there as a sentinel, but you really do not need it. So you can just remove that as soon as you need extra space. You're going to train eventually Joyo form. You don't have to train this as a combat spec sentinel because this is not the form you're going to use. You could always train it just to have it if you wanted to, but you don't have to spend the money if you want to play combat spec. If you do train it, you just take it off your quick bar, and it's the kind of thing that you can access from the ability menu by pressing P if you need it for some reason, which you shouldn't. As combat spec, you shouldn't be using it. The same with sprint. When you train sprint, it's set it and forget it. You're going to go at level 15 to your trainer. He'll teach you sprint, turn it on, and then move it away from your quick bar. It's in the ability menu. By pressing P, you can get there anytime you need. If you need to turn it back off or on, again, if it somehow turns off for some reason. But it is a set it and forget it thing. It should always be on. It's a toggle. You don't have to worry about it ever again. Heroic Moment is an ability that you can take off your quick bar as well. This is just an emergency kind of like extra survival skill for when you have bit off more than you can chew. The way that most people use this is they only really use it if they are having trouble with a boss or something. Maybe he's killed them a couple times and they need some extra help. It has a 20-minute cooldown. It's just this thing you use very rarely when you're like in really big trouble and you really need some extra boost. So I would just say take it off your bar. You don't need it on there. If you run into a boss that you're having a hard time with, you can put it back on the bar just for him somewhere. Take off something else just temporarily, and then use that to defeat the boss, and then pull it off again and put the other thing back on there. That'll be completely fine. Another ability which you're going to want to basically remove as soon as you need extra space is Cyclone Slash. It's an AoE ability. You already have Force Sweep, which is a kind of easier to use AoE. Cyclone Slash would be nice to have, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not something you'd use much, and to save a quick slot bar, you can get rid of it. It's fine. And lastly, Inspiration. Jedi Sentinels have a mechanic called centering, where every time you use skills or kill enemies, you build centering. And once you have built 30 stacks of centering, once you've done something to build centering 30 times, it lets you use that centering as a kind of a resource to activate one of 3 special abilities. One is called Zen, which depending on which spec you are, it does different things. One is called Transcendence, which makes you move very fast, and it's an especially important ability for combat spec sentinels, which is what we're talking about now. And the other is Inspiration. Inspiration is really something which is supposed to be used in very coordinated PvP and very coordinated operations. It's not something which affects just you. It affects your entire group, all of your allies, your teammates. But it's not something you're going to need just as leveling, or even in something like flashpoints or doing heroic missions. It's really not necessary, so you can take that off. You can train it if you want, and you can try it out. Maybe you do find that you like to use it in flashpoints. That's fine. You can find a way to fit it on if you really would like to, but it's honestly not necessary unless you really want it to be. Lastly, don't train Opportune Strike and don't train Pommel Strike. These are these weird abilities. Every class has at least one. Some have 2. The Jedi Knight has 2. Basically, they're high damage abilities which can only be used on stunned enemies who are weak, strong, or standard. It can't be used on champions. It can't be used on elite enemies. So it's this high damage ability that's who you'd want to use it on, but it's not able to be used on them. So it's kind of useless. I never train these things when I make characters. A lot of other people don't either. The other reason I don't use it is even with 6 quick bars, there's only so many comfortable button assignments, right? and they just don't pass the test of being useful enough to deserve a button assignment that is easy to press. So if I had them on some random quick bar, they'd be some kind of crazy, button, which would be ridiculous to even use. Don't get them. Don't save the money. You don't need them. So that's pretty much that. The one other thing to say is that there is one special thing you're going to do as a Jedi Sentinel in the combat spec, which is you're going to take slash off your bar when you hit level 40 in exchange for this ability called Blade Rush right here. Blade Rush basically does the same thing as slash, but it has some additional beneficial effects. It's related to the combat spec. You get it through the combat spec, and it replaces slash. So we're able to save a quick slot bar, because anyways, when you play this spec, you replace slash with Blade Rush basically. So you do not need to have slash on the bar anymore after that. Lastly, I'd just say, if you find that you're looking for additional slots, you're looking for additional kind of quick slot bars, quick slot spaces for some ability here or there, maybe your mount, your speeder, maybe a med pack. It's a little rougher with this spec than some of the other Sentinel specs to find something to do, because you really do need Blade Storm. It's a part of the spec. With Blade Storm is one I would suggest that people could, if they really wanted to, remove into other specs. In this one, I'd just say if you really want to get rid of something, you could try getting rid of Disable Droid, because it's a stun basically, which only works on droids. You don't have one that affects biological targets, and so I figure you're going to have to fight a bunch of mobs of biological targets anyway without being able to stun them, really. So you should be able to handle the same thing from droids. It's nice to have, but if you're really looking for something, you can get rid of it. And also, again, I don't recommend this really, but if you're really looking to find one more slot, you could always get rid of one of your defensive abilities. Jedi Sentinels have a lot of them. You have Saber Ward, you have Rebuke, you have Pacify, you have Guarded by the Force, which is a great ability. You have Force Camouflage. There's so many. There's like 5 defensive abilities. They're all important and useful. And the fact is that Jedi Knights or Jedi Sentinels, a big part of playing the class is using these at the right time to stay alive so that you can output your massive DPS. That being said, if you really want to find one more slot for something, by the time you'll need one, you'll have had experience with all of these defensive cooldowns, and you will be able to say, gee, I think I'd feel comfortable taking whatever off my quick bar. Rebuke. I never use Rebuke, or something like that. I don't recommend it, but it's just a thought if you really, really want to find one other thing. Cool. So with that, I'm just going to run you through a very basic Jedi Sentinel combat spec build. It's not necessarily the best build, it's not necessarily the only build, but it is a build, and it is one that you can use. And when I put it together, it's basically the standard combat build for the most part, but I did try to keep in mind the fact that you're a free-to-play player and that you only have so many quick slot bars. So I thought about those things while making it, and I will explain in those places if they cause me to make any decisions. I'm not going to go into what every single one of these skill points does. You can read them and figure that out. But what you can do is I will explain, that is to say, particular ones here and there, which I think it's helpful to do. So, at level 10 is when you're going to get your very first skill point to spend, and you're going to spend it on dual wield mastery. At level 11, you're going to do the same thing, and at level 12, the same thing until you have that completely filled out with 3 points. Next, you're going to go into defensive forms. Now, defensive forms is very good for a tower form. It makes you move more quickly. It's pretty cool. It gives you move pretty fast. It's nice. Next, you're going to go into steadfast. So again, just at level 15 1, at level 16 1, at level 17 the third one. Then defensive roll at level 18, And at level 19 and level 20, you get a Taru form. Here's the form I told you about that is going to replace SWtOR form. This is just like Sprint. It's set it and forget it. When you train this, what you're going to do is activate it, then take it off your quick slot bar. It's always turned on. It's what you should always have as a Combat Spec Jedi Sentinel. If you really need to get at it for some reason, you can press P and it will be under the list of abilities that pops up, but you don't need to do that, generally speaking, unless something weird happened. It is just on, set it and forget it. Boom. Next, move over and you're going to take Opportune Attack 1 and 2. At level 23, Ataru Mastery, and at level 24, Ataru Mastery. Now you're going to go up and do Combat Trance, and then Immaculate Force. And this right here is why you do not want to get rid of Blade Storm. Blade Storm is important because the mechanic of this spec is that you're going to have random things, and it's going to happen fairly frequently, that you're going to get a little buff, which tells you that your next Blade Storm is going to have 100% critical chance. In other words, it's going to be very heavy hitting damage, and so you're going to be watching for that little buff to pop up, and when you see it, you're going to know you should use Blade Storm because it's going to do a ton of damage. So you want to make sure you do have Blade Storm. Moving forward, you're going to put a point into Righteous Zeal and another point into Righteous Zeal, and now you're going to go ahead and take Precision Slash. Precision Slash is a ability which is going to go on your quick slot bar. So it needs to be on there. It's a part of the spec. It increases armor penetration for by 100%, which is really good. It's going to make you do a lot more damage. You're going to use this whenever you can to make your target more vulnerable. After you get Precision Slash, you'll take Fleet-Footed 1 and 2, and then you'll go over and do Swift Blades 1 and 2, then 3 points into Saber Storm, 2 points in Debilitation, and 1 point into Blade Rush. Now remember I said that you should replace Slash with Blade Rush. Some people replace Slash with Precision Slash and will have Blade Rush. I mean, ultimately, it's not going to make that much of a difference. By the time you are at level 40, these two are going to be on your bar, and Slash is not. But just remember that by at least level 40, you need to have replaced Slash and moved it off the bar, and you'll have Precision Slash and Blade Rush on there instead. Alright, so now level 41. At level 41, you are going to put a point into Master Focus and another one. And then you're going to come over and do 3 points into Focused Slash. It's going to increase the damage on a lot of those abilities we've just been speaking about. And then Valor, which will give you more centering, which you can use to activate especially Transcendence, which is especially good for Combat Spec Sentinels. It's quite remarkable how fast you'll move. It's amazing. Finally, you can put 3 points into Insight, and there you go. There's your Combat Spec Jedi Sentinel build. There might be different ways to do it. Maybe by the time you reach higher levels, you'll say, I'd prefer to put points in here instead of this. That's fine. You can customize it to what you think is best. But for the most part, this is the build, and it should work out well. There's a little bit of defense in there to help you because, taking deaths is not the best thing that you want to do because of the fact that you have to resurrect at med centers and things like that. So here it is. I hope it works out well for you. Remember to check the text link below, which will let you read this stuff so you can just kind of look at it and check up on it when you get to that spec instead of having to rewatch the video every time you forget something. And of course, if you're interested in either of the other two Jedi Sentinel specs or any other spec in the game, there's a video up, or if there's not right now, there will be fairly soon, which is going to discuss that. So thanks a lot, guys, for everything, and I hope you have fun.